Senator Warren has done quite a bit of research on senior debt as a professor. Senator Warren.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Thank you and Ranking Member Collins for doing this hearing. You all show such great leadership every time in these and getting these issues out here, powerfully important. You know, I think it's fundamental that we all believe that if you work hard, you ought to be able to retire with dignity. And yet Social Security provides just the barest minimum for most people, and rising costs for food, rising costs for health care, rising costs for drugs is really putting the squeeze on families. And the chairman mentioned, you're right, I did a lot of research on this. I spent a lot of time working on how families struggle economically. And among the different studies I did was one that showed that families from 1991 to 2007, we saw a 150% increase in the percentage of people over the age of 65 who were forced to file for bankruptcy. In bankruptcy because of rising medical costs out of pocket, in bankruptcy because of divorce or the death of a spouse as families break up, in bankruptcy even at that age because they lost jobs that they needed to be able to keep their budgets together. So I've seen this, and I know it's a terrible problem. I appreciate the work you're doing to bring this to our attention, and thank you, Ms. Jacobsen. As Ranking Member Collins said, it's very important to have a personal face on this, and I appreciate your coming here today. I'd just like to ask a question about helping people save more for retirement. The idea of how they can best take care of themselves. And we know from the research that if there's an employer-sponsored plan, I think as you said, Ms. Calimafde, that we'll see more people in that plan. I think you said 14 times as many people will get into a retirement plan if we've got employer sponsorship of those plans. And yet we know from the Employment Benefits Research Institute that about half of all employers offer no retirement plan of any kind, and that the GAO tells us that for companies that have 100 or fewer employees, the rate at which that 72% offer no retirement plans of any kind. Now, as I understand it, for small businesses, since this is obviously a problem, fewer small businesses are offering retiree plans, that one of the principal reasons they talk about are the high administrative costs, that it's very expensive for small businesses to do this. And so businesses have pooled together. We have the multiple employer plans so that small businesses can work together to try to get benefits for their employees. Now, today I joined Chairman Nelson and Senator Murray in a letter to the Department of Treasury encouraging them to go forward with rulemaking to protect small businesses in the multiple employer plans by ensuring that an entire plan will not become disqualified in the event that one particular company breaks the rules, the bad apple problem. And so what I'd like to do is just ask, if you could, I thought I'd start with you, Ms. Calimafde, if you could just speak briefly to the question of how important it is to remove obstacles so that small businesses are more likely to participate in employer-sponsored pension plans.
Well, that is critical. But I want to start off by saying that I think the GAO study, as far as coverage in the small business sector, is wrong. And that there is a study that was done in 2011 by the Social Security Administration that relied on W-2 data rather than surveying employees. And what they found was, and I've got this exactly in my report, but basically, if you were looking at a small business, and I'll just pick one side, that employs 25 employees, but less than 50, 60% of those businesses offer retirement plans. So the numbers are much better. And again, those of us who work in this area are not surprised because employees very often don't even know they're making 401k contributions to the plan, and even more strangely, they don't even know their company's making contributions for them. So, so the world is not as dark as we thought. It's much better than we thought. But that doesn't mean we shouldn't encourage more formation, because the more formation, and we know people take up the 401k, so the savings in the plan, so that's the way to go. MEPs, I encourage, applaud you trying to get rid of the bad apple rule. It's not a fair rule. Basically, in a MEP where you have a group of employers coming together, if one of them has a plan that's disqualified, it disqualifies all the plans that were covered. I think the goal of a MEP to lower administrative costs is a good goal. I have a feeling it would end up like a lowest common denominator type of plan. Hopefully it'd be like a starter plan, because I have a feeling that the choices, as far as investment choices and whatever, would not be as good as you would normally get in a regular brokerage house or insurance company plan.
So if I can, Mr. Chairman, can I just follow up with one more question on pensions, and then we'll have this one out here, because I just think it's so important. And that is whether we're talking about 40% of the employees of small businesses not having any employer-sponsored plan, or whether we're talking about 70% not having them. It's still way too many. And we're looking for ways to try to get more people into employer-sponsored plans. So I want to ask one more question about that. And that is that the GAO also found that small businesses pay higher fees than larger employers, and that small businesses, because they lack the economies of scale of larger employers, sometimes are just left out here, and that much of the increased cost comes from the lack of expertise of the small businesses in picking these plans and having to deal with these plans. So last year, the Department of Labor implemented new 401k employee fee disclosures to try to help small businesses and participants better understand the fees they're paying. And I understand that disclosure is always enormously valuable. I'm never going to object to having more disclosure. But the real question I have is, would it be more helpful if we just made these rules simpler and encourage the Department of Labor to get simpler rules out there for the employers and for the employees? Dr. Mitchell, would you like to speak to that?
Being against simplification, I think, is un-American, but absolutely. I've been working in this area for 30 years.
Let me just say it this way. Would it make a real difference? Maybe that's the way I should put it. Everyone's in favor of it, but do you think it would make a real difference?
Well, the issue is that Congress has used tax law and a number of other laws to shape the environment in which we save for retirement. So there's a certain amount you can put in tax qualified. There's a certain amount you can take out without a penalty. There's certain ages. It is very complicated. I do believe that the research has shown, however, that automatic enrollment works. If you have an employer who can put in place a pension and pop everybody into it, people stay in it. They know they should be saving for retirement. There's also the issue of, if you auto-enroll people, what do you put them into in terms of investments? I think Congress did the right thing, and the Labor Department did the right thing in putting folks into target date funds. Again, there's a big variety of them, but by and large, it's better than holding your money in money market funds for the next 70 years. The big question is, what happens at retirement? So those of us that have defined contribution plans, 401k plans, get there with a lump sum, and then we're left adrift. How do we manage the money so we don't outspend it in retirement? So I think that's the crucial issue, how to inform people, how to make employers comfortable with helping people through the payout phase.
Thank you very much, and thank you for your indulgence, Mr. Chairman. I want to push back on that notion, though. I understand that people are living longer, but that doesn't necessarily mean that someone can work longer. Living until you're 85 does not mean you can still manage a construction job at 65.
True.
Or that you can still take care of small children where there's lots of bending and lifting and carrying.
Right.
Or that you can still work as a nurse. That there are so many jobs, that require you to be strong, that require, or that have battered people's bodies for years.
Well, I agree with that, Senator, but I'm just saying that there's a lot of jobs out there where people are being put out to pasture at age 65, and 65 is a very vital person today. And so I'm almost turning it on its head, saying these forced retirement ages that companies are coming up with are really not, they don't fit with today and who people are at 65 today.
Maybe we're just describing different
Right,
parts
we got
of the problem, because I think I would say this the other way around. As I understand it, we don't have most forced retirement ages anymore. What we've got are people who are trying to work and who can't get work, or people for whom it is just not possible to continue to work for years to come. And the question is how we're going to manage longer retirement periods. And I think expecting people to work until they're 68, 70, 72 is just not realistic and frankly just not right. For those who want to work, for those who can work, for those who can find the right kinds of jobs and part-time jobs, I'm all for it. Right. But if we think the solution to dealing with the coming economic crisis around retirement is to expect people to work until they're 72, I just think that's wrong. I don't think we can do that. And I don't think we should be looking in that direction. But if I can, I just want to go back to the point, though, that Senator Manchin raised. When Senator Manchin talks about the difference between using a chain CPI for some people and perhaps not for others, what you're really doing is just acknowledging that at least as the chain CPI has been laid out, we're just talking about over time a cut in benefits. And I think that Senator Collins goes to the right point when she says the fundamental question we have to address is whether the benefits are adequate. And then we have to find the right way to grow them over time for people. But that's the baseline question. And pretending that this is a question that somehow goes away if we use a different inflation index, I think just misses the whole point. We've got to make sure we are paying people enough, exactly as you said, Senator Collins, so that people are not retiring in poverty.
If I can chime in.